Hey guys, today I'll show you the short recap of a 2019 Spanish crime thriller movie, Eye for an Eye. The movie begins with a man who is chained to his hands, pleading for forgiveness as a man drags him and later pushes him into a cage. The next scene shows Antonio Padin, a semi-retired drug lord who has just been released from prison due to his deteriorating health condition, being medically assessed by a nurse. One of his sons, Tono, meets with him and hands him a phone to speak with his other son Kiko. Kiko tells him about a crab, which is the chained man in a cage, he got hold of and does not know what to do with him. Antonio tells him to break the crab's leg and returns the phone to Tono. Tono is excited that his father is coming home but is soon shocked as he reveals that he will go to a nursing home instead. Tono then asks him why, and he tells him that because I feel like it. In the next scene, Mario, the protagonist, kneels in front of his wife Julia at a couple's pregnancy class, and they are both seen laughing and causing a distraction to the other couples. Later that day, his wife drops him at his workplace, which is a nursing home. He then walks up to a patient and tries to cheer him up and convince him to eat the food he feels was poisoned, which he finally ate. He then goes to change his clothes and is seen called by a nurse named Mercedes. She informs him about a new patient named Antonio Padin, and Mario recognizes him as a drug lord, which she attests to. She tells him that Antonio has a degenerative disease and he was sent home, but he preferred to be under medical supervision in the nursing home. The next scene shows Antonio discussing with his sons about a deal they had with the Chinese and Colombians. He tells them he is out of the deal, which pisses Kiko off. Mercedes appears in their midst and introduces Mario to them as the head of nursing. Mario then takes Antonio to show him around the vicinity. Later that day, Mario tries to put Antonio through some exercise gear with his hands in the rehabilitation room. Tono and Kiko appear with Mercedes, and as Mario excuses them, Tono tells his father that they will be going on with the deal with or without his support. Before they both leave, Kiko warns Mario not to be harsh with his father. The next day, a lady nurse tries to get Antonio from his bed for a cleanup, but he dismisses her, but Mario comes in and tries to talk to him and convinces him to go out for a walk in the garden, which he agrees to. Mario then later takes him to have his breakfast, and at night he takes him back to bed, and Antonio thanks him. Later that night, Mario calls his wife that he will be late and asks if she can come to pick him up. He is later seen exchanging some cash for a drug with an intoxicated man. As Mario walks off, the man tells him he recognizes his face and was supposed dead, but Mario doesn't answer him. Mario is later seen using a lighter to boil the drug in a spoon and draws it into a syringe. He then goes to inject it through the veins on Antonio's toes. Mario's wife, Julia, comes to pick him up, and she notices him shaking, but he tells her he is okay. She then tries to make him feel better by putting his head on her stomach to feel their baby's heartbeat. In the next scene, Kiko receives a call about their deal, and he goes to inform Tono. While leaving, Tono sees their father playing a game with arrest patients, and he calls Kiko's attention to it. They are happy to see him. Later they are seen discussing with Antonio about the deal. Antonio realizes they still got him involved with the deal, and he laughs at them, but this pisses Kiko off, and he angrily tells him to shut up and walks away. The next scene shows Mario preparing Antonio for the day. He is later seen with a syringe containing heroin and stares at himself in a mirror. At night he injects the heroin on Antonio's toes again. The next scene shows Mario and Julia in an ultrasound room where they get to know their baby is a boy. The doctor asks if they would like to listen to the heart, to which Julia agrees. As Mario listens to it, he gets lost in a flashback of his younger self using a syringe to inject heroin into someone's body. His wife calls him, and he quickly gets himself back. The following day, Tono is seen with several phones in an office. Kiko calls him, but he does not pick up. Kiko then calls a man who is later seen driving a van off. A man drives a van to a warehouse, and some policemen arrive as he is about to open the gates. They got him arrested but couldn't find anything incriminating in the van. However, a different van is seen entering a different warehouse and delivering the drugs successfully. A Chinese woman called Mrs. Kong welcomes the drivers and gives them money. Kiko later calls Tono, and he is seen driving off but isn't aware that a tracker has been placed beneath his car by the police. Kiko arrives at the warehouse only to hear the police siren. He is arrested but quickly presses an alarm button to notify Tono. At a different location in the warehouse, the men who deliver the drugs are attacked by the Chinese, but the driver manages to escape from them. Conversely, Tono luckily escapes from the warehouse through a secret exit and is later seen driving away on a ferry boat. In the next scene, the nurses are seen having a meeting about the patients, and they ask Mario about Antonio. He tells them about Antonio's deteriorating condition, and some other nurses also agree with him. Later that day, Mario feeds Antonio, but he spits the food out. Antonio later sees his son Kiko on the TV being arrested, and as he tries to take the remote, he falls down, but Mario stares at him until a nurse comes around to help him out. The next scene shows Tono discussing with his lawyer Santiago, and he tells Tono that Kiko has been transferred to jail, but they can get him out once the bail is out. Tono tells him they don't have money as their father was not in support of the deal they had. Later that day, Tono goes to meet Antonio. He tells him about the incident and asks for his help to get Kiko out of jail. Antonio does not respond to him, and Tono leaves. Tono goes to visit Kiko in jail. Kiko tells him that he must quickly get him out of jail. Tono informs him about going to meet their father for help, which he rejects. However, he promises to return and convince their father to help them. Tono heads off to the nursing home and sees Mario from afar talking with his father in the garden. Later that day, Tono sends one of his men, Zepes, to get Mario. Tony then tells him to convince his father to come home as he adores him. He then threatens that he will deal with his wife if he can't do the task. The next scene shows Mario at home, and his wife sees him hitting a bass drum. Mario gets a flashback of his past and looks devastated. Mario is later seen in Antonio's room and tells him everything about his brother Sergio, who died of a drug overdose 25 years ago. He also tells Antonio that his brother did work with him and had always fought for him. He then tells Antonio that he has since stopped his medication, and has been injecting heroin into him and putting bleach in his food so he can die faster. Later that night, Tono and one of his men, Zepes, go to meet Andres, who is known to be a nurse in the nursing home. Tono tells him to convince his father to come home, but Andres doesn't listen to him, and as he is about to call the police, Zepes knocks him out. On the other hand, Kiko is seen being assaulted by some men in the jail who tell him to pay up their money quickly. In the next scene, Antonio tries to communicate with a nurse about a bag in the closet, but Mario comes in, and the nurse leaves. Julia comes to visit Mario at work, and she goes to meet him. She later sees a lady who directs her to where Mario is in the garden. However, as she learns that the old man Mario has been caring for is Antonio Padon, her water breaks, and the lady calls for help. Tono goes to meet Kiko, and he finds out about the incident that happened to him. In the next scene, Julia is taken to a hospital, and as she tries to question Mario, a doctor comes in and interrupts them. Mario receives a phone call and leaves to speak with the person. Mario later heads to the nursing home, where he sees some policemen, and Mercedes tells him about Andres' death. Mario sees a man in a suit come out of Antonio's room, and he goes to ask him who it is, but Antonio laughs it off. Mario is pissed by these and decides to give him an overdose of heroin that will make him die. Julia calls Mario and pleads with him to return and not continue his act, but he cuts the phone off. Mario is seen about to inject the drug into Antonio's drip but is interrupted by the doctor. He asks her who the man in the suit is, and she tells him it is a notary. Mario hears the nurse talk about Antonio's blood samples, and at night he replaces the samples with another so as not to get caught. Later that night, Mario reveals to Antonio that he killed his brother as he pushed him to do it. He then injects Antonio with the drug and leaves. Tono is seen in his car in a tense-up argument via phone call with one of the drug dealers called Rojas. He sees Mario drive past him and he follows him from behind to attack him. However, Tono gets hit by a fast-moving car and gets unconscious for a while. Mario then frames Tono up by first cleaning his fingerprints on the syringe he used on Antonio and then pressing it on Tono's hands. Tono regains consciousness, but Mario suffocates him till he dies. Mario then heads to meet his wife in the hospital as she is in labor. She finally gives birth and she names him Sergio. Antonio dies, and Kiko attends his funeral. Mario, who is also there, meets with the notary he saw at the nursing home. He invites Mario for a meeting and gives him his card. At the meeting, Kiko is also present, and the notary informs them that Antonio gave all his property to Mario's firstborn. Kiko is angry by these and calls Zepes, who is later seen about to enter Mario's house. A scene shows how Kiko is covered with a cloth and killed with a knife. The movie ends with Mario seeing his wife shot in the head and bleeding. So that is it for today, guys. Hope you had an awesome day, and do not forget to cheer people around you. If you like the video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for daily content like this.